Good afternoon. Thanks for joining the presentation today. My name is Romeo Sequeira. I'm Senior Director of Consulting based at QAD Corporate in Santa Barbara. I am responsible for consulting services in North America. I've been with QAD for roughly 16 years now. And just bringing in my experience on what you should be looking at when you plan to upgrade to EE from a business standpoint. That's the topic for today. And along with me, I have Mark Farley, who is the Vice President of FEI company worldwide. And Mark will be sharing his success story about how they gained out of EE upgrades. So Mark will be sharing with us a great story today. So a quick safe harbor statement, just things we have to say when we do presentations. I won't spend time on that. Today's agenda, a quick introduction on what this topic is, and then we will go through some of the business benefits you should think about when you go to EE or when you're planning for EE, all right? Then we'll talk about customer engagement process QAD has put together. We have been doing this for a few years now, and how that can help put together a business case for EE. And then finally, Mark will be talking about his own experience and how FEI gained as part of EE implementation, how they benefited out of it, okay? And then we'll just quickly summarize. Any questions, you can hold it off if you can, and we'll give you a chance to ask at the end of the session. That's okay. So today's goal, as I mentioned, it's the business benefit of Enterprise Edition. So we are not going to talk about feature functionality, functions, and modules. That's not the agenda for today. The agenda is really helping you put together a business case so you can, when you are going to your management for an EE project, what are the top 5 things you want to gain out of that project, right? That's the key point for when you put together a business case. A business case is not necessary needs to be a manuscript. It needs to not be like a book where you enter every single scenario. It can be simple. In fact, I would prefer it to be simple, where it's easily understood. You have an executive summary where you lay down the project, what's the benefit, is there a revenue benefit or cost benefit, the risk you carry with the project, the timeline, the cost. You need to put together that when you present a business case, right? I mean, you know that. But a lot of times we don't take time to put that together when we go to our management for a project. And especially for EE, I'll say it's not just IT, even business team members should be part of it. So IT and business can do it together, or business themselves may take the initiative to do that for the company, okay? And then finally, as I said, we will leverage our experience. We have helped other companies, including FEI, putting together that business case. So I will show you what it means and how you can leverage us. So real quick, business benefits. I mean, last year I presented Enterprise Edition. That was more feature functionality. What we did in Enterprise Edition in addition to finance. How many of you attended that session? I see a few hands. That's great. So this topic, as I mentioned, will be more focused towards business benefits. The first thing I would like to highlight is user productivity. So with Enterprise Edition, we have done a lot of work to improve user productivity, right? And that clearly, when you look at it, managed by exception. So we have workflow alerts, a lot of exception-based tool defined within EE release with .NET UI and so forth. So you can reduce some of the cost. You're not spending time reviewing every single record. You can reduce some of that cost, labor cost, by management by exception. The other area we have improved is reducing customization and IT support costs, right? We have introduced configured screens and all that enhancements in EE that can help you dashboards. That's a big enhancement we have introduced in EE that can reduce some of the customizations you may be doing traditionally. Again, number of user errors. We have operational metrics. We have workflow alerts. We have business process management, all built into EE, where you can leverage to proactively stop users from making mistakes. You can tell them what's the next step in the process. Cycle time, the entire cycle time doing a transaction, right? Let's say processing an order. You can reduce some of that. And these have direct impact to your cost for your business. I mean, I'll show you real quick an example how some of this can help. And then finally, training and employee retention. One of the key challenges I've seen with customers, especially in today's market, is employee turnover. And how do you keep people educated and up to date on your system, on your business, and also onboarding new users. One of the key things with EE is the UI is very attractive when it comes to new generation. If you want to onboard new users, new generation, they won't like the character UI. All right, I mean, you might be using that for a while, but that's not attractive. So these are some. You look at it from a business standpoint, how it impacts your business when it comes to EE. I've just highlighted some of it, but there are a lot more others you can add from a business benefit standpoint. And of course, you can increase your revenue by doing more transactions. We introduced upsell, cross-sell, all of that feature in Enterprise Edition where you can sell more while you're doing an order entry. So there are some enhancements we have done in EE where you can do more transactions, more business per cycle. So just a quick example on user productivity. You can see just an example, right? You don't have to take this literally. This is just an example. If there are 2 errors committed by a user per week, that user has to, number one, document that error, what happened, fix that error, communicate that error to your business community. Whether it's a customer, it's a supplier, or it's an internal user, you have to communicate that information. Oh, I got a mistake, I need to fix it, this is what happened. They may spend, I'm just saying, on an average 60 minutes to fix that error, right? So if you calculate that based on, let's say, average, you have 150 users, two errors a week, just an example. You can take 1 error a week. It comes down to a significant amount. And again, you don't need to use in your business case a dollar amount. I know sometimes I've seen people hesitate to put dollar amount in a business case. It's not easy to put a dollar amount. But you can put a percentage, saying we can improve productivity by X%. Or you can put hours. You can put some non-dollar descriptive benefit, right? You can still do that, and that's still a good business benefit. And that's how we can say that these are the values we can get out of the project. Again, focus on the top 5, 10 benefits. Don't create hundreds of benefits which you cannot achieve. And it's too much to digest in a project. Okay? Focus on the top 5 things your business needs, or you can provide your business as a result of this project. The other big area we have done a lot of work in EE is compliance. And compliance can have a big impact to a business, right? I mean, you have heard in news the risk of not being compliant, whether it's a recall, the cost of a recall, or not being compliant, the fines levied by government for life science or even aerospace or any other business. The cost of compliance can be big. And it's not just monetary, it can be big on the brand impact. All right, so there is no value attached to it. It's invaluable. So EE, we have done a lot of work around compliance, whether it's industry compliance, whether it's a business sector compliance, whether it's finance, internationalization-related compliance. We have done a lot of different enhancements in this area. So you have to look at it. Is my business, do we need some of this in my business? Will that help us to be more successful and have a competitive advantage? Being compliant actually can be viewed as a competitive advantage in your business. So the 3 areas within compliance: security. Within EE, we have really redesigned the whole entire security layer. We have the roles and permissions, segregation of duties, where you can really manage the conflicts among roles. Public companies, you have to do that, right? I mean, as part of SOX compliance or audits, you have to do it. But even for private company, the cost of control or security can be reduced by using some of these capabilities in Enterprise Edition. Okay? So it's not necessary just public companies gain out of it. Compliance cost, control cost, are even applicable for a private company. Okay. Similarly, in the industry side, we have finance, we have IFRS, GAAP, all of that reporting structure defined. FDA, if life science customers are here, we have CFR Part 11, e-pedigree, the serialization enhancement we have done, that's related to e-pedigree. I mean, that will support that compliance requirement from California government, and it's kind of going to be adopted by other states as well. Attributes, quality, TMS for export-import compliance, documentation, export-import documentation. Some of these are just needs, I mean, are requirements. You don't even have choice. You have to do it. But the others, it can help you reduce cost and money in the long run. So look at that. And then finally, international regulatory. We have internationalization for 47 countries defined within Enterprise Edition. And that's in the base software. You don't need to install a different software for it. It's in the base software. So if you're doing business in Brazil, we have all that legal requirements covered there. If you're doing business in China or Japan, we have that covered within Enterprise Edition. Okay? So all of that legal international requirements are enhanced and built in within the enterprise release. It's part of the core product. Customer service. So I'm sure most of you are using customer service functions within EE. It's one of the core features. So if you look at both from a revenue standpoint or a cost standpoint, there is an operating cost, there is an order cost, there is an order cycle time. How quickly you can make decisions. With the EE dashboard feature, you can see that we have information, key information, in one single place. We have a dashboard for a customer service manager. We have another dashboard for a customer service rep. We have separate dashboards for separate roles. And the benefit of that is you can make quick decisions on, is my order on time? Is it shipping on full on time? I mean, those kind of decisions can be made quickly. You can look at the ones which are not shipping on time and focus on those instead of trying to go through hundreds and thousands of records and trying to figure it out yourself. You need to reduce some of your business costs by leveraging some of those capabilities in Enterprise Edition. And there is a cost benefit to it. So that order cost, stockouts, that has a direct impact to your business. So look at that. From a profitability standpoint, by shipping order on time, customer satisfaction, you get more orders, you get more happy customers. That has a direct impact to your top line revenue or even bottom line revenue, right? So financials. We did a lot of enhancements. We feel like EE is all about financials. It's not. It's a lot more than financials, as I mentioned before. But financials, we have completely revamped with EE. And if you look at the accounting cost of creating reports, we have rewritten the financial report writer entirely brand new in EE for creating income statements, balance sheets, you name it. All of those reports can be done more quickly, more in a very efficient manner, so you can reduce some of your financial reporting costs. Even the closing, right, month-end or quarter-end closing, if you can save a few hours or even a day, that adds up when it comes to financial month-end closing. And I've seen customers doing that as a result of EE. And Mark can share some of his experience with their own EE implementation. Reducing debt, bad debt, especially bad debt. We have done a great job in credit management within EE. So you want to reduce your bad debt, right? You want to make sure the customer is really qualified, there is a good credit control. So EE, we have come up with some very good credit control, credit management enhancement that can help you reduce bad debt, improve your DSO, look at your AR, how you can have better AR in that area. Shared services, so we have introduced shared services and also a good financial consolidation capability. So if you have multiple business entities, you can consolidate them within EE. So you can do that all within one database or even separate database, but ideally EE, you can do all in one database and have consolidation. And you can drill down, you can have a GL drill down from a consolidated record to the ultimate transaction at the very end. So you have that capability within EE. Okay? And then as I mentioned about financial reporting, you can do that. There is shared services, so accounts receivables, accounts payables. You can implement shared services within EE. You can centrally pay your suppliers. You can centrally bill your customers. You can do all of that with EE. Okay? So this is just a quick dashboard for a CFO in a company, how they can gather the quick key KPI, key metrics for their company. They can look at it real quick on a single dashboard, and you can personalize this. This is not the end format. If you decide you need to track a different metric or a different set of information, you can quickly change that. But all of this is predefined with the EE release. We created around 40-plus dashboards based on a role within the Enterprise Edition. Let's talk about IT. I mean, from an EE release standpoint, the one big enhancements we have done there is Unicode support. So we can have any language within the same database. In fact, FEI did a great job there, and Mark will talk about it. So you can have one database and consolidate all your independent databases in single database with multiple domains. All right? So you can reduce some of that overhead or maintenance cost. Well, instead of maintaining 5 different databases, 5 different ways, you can just maintain one database when you go to Enterprise Edition. And that's huge. I mean, just talking about operational cost, maintenance cost, that's big. Master data. Enterprise Edition has the concept of business relation, where you can have customers and suppliers that can share a common business relation. So let's say you have this very big customer, but they have different names in different countries, and that's fine. You can keep different customer number for the same end big customer you have, but they can be all related via business relation concept. So that helps you leverage some of master data harmonization. Whether it's customers, you can do the same for suppliers, and chart of accounts, you can do shared sets across all 3. For item master, bill of material, you can implement master data replication. That's QX10 based. Mark and his team at FEI is leveraging that as well. So you can do for item master supplier, bill of material, master data replication. But for customer, suppliers, and chart of account, we have shared sets in EE. So you can do master data standardization using that capability. And that's a big cost. I mean, you cannot put a dollar figure. But even if just saying that we can standardize master data is a big business benefit for your company. All right, so that may be a driving factor why you want to upgrade. Improving service level, improving service resolution time. I mean, with cloud computing, QAD gives you a platform for us to take the ownership, so you can focus on your business, and QAD Cloud can take the ownership for maintaining your SLA or maintaining the service level resolution time. But even with you doing it on premise, you can still do that on your own with the tools and templates we have in Enterprise Edition, and also what we have developed for cloud. You can do the same on premise kind of environment as well. So those are some of the benefits you can gain out of EE. From a supply chain standpoint, we have done some good enhancements around enterprise material transport for automating your buy-sell relationship between customers and suppliers. So if you, basically getting customer orders, not supplier, getting a customer order and then passing it on to another business division. We have done some great enhancements there, and that can help you improve or make it a more leaner process when it comes to order processing between your company. Reducing inventory, time to market. One of the key metric in today's market is how soon you can design a product, a brand new product, and how soon you can launch and start shipping it, right? That entire cycle from design to engineering to order to supply chain to shipment, setting that whole cycle is a big cost, or not just from a cost, from a time perspective. Companies are looking to see how they can reduce that further. And Enterprise Edition gives you that platform where we have As I mentioned, the enterprise material transfer, that's just within the company, but we have done some enhancements in PCC, the whole engineering product change control module, and so forth, the master data replication, as I mentioned. So you can do new design, new products, replicate that quickly, use business process management to automate some of your workflows to improve some of that, reduce some of that lead time. Again, reducing expedited orders. How often you are shipping orders and paying high transportation fees, or how often you're missing customers' order promise date. With EE, we have some better planning and scheduling tools defined. The MSW, PSW, we have some of the very good enhancements done in the planning and scheduling process areas. So that can help you reduce some of your forecasting errors, capacity utilization. All of that can come together and reduce some of your costs. All right. From a manufacturing standpoint, as I mentioned, a lot of improvements done in planning and scheduling. You can really leverage your capacity. It's a single dashboard where you can see your planned orders, your raw materials, your procurement time, capacity. You can look at all of that in one single place and make quick decisions, whether it comes to capacity or expediting orders. Component availability, we have the component availability check within MSW, PSW, where you can make sure that components are available so your manufacturing is not on a standstill mode because of lack of component. So these are big cost elements when it comes to manufacturing. Because the manufacturing also includes quality, the cost of quality, right? The cost of repair or the cost of recall. So within EE, we have inbuilt quality enhancement where it's done at the purchasing level, in the manufacturing level, in the quality process. We have it's called the inline quality check. So you can do quality checks at every single level, define your item specifications, so make sure the supplier item coming in is matching that specification, right? The attributes defined for it. And similarly for a customer, your item where you're producing, your finished good, is matching your customer's specification. So the cost of quality is a big factor, and you can reduce some of that using the enhanced quality within Enterprise Edition. Okay. Inventory. I mean, increasing inventory turns is not necessary in every industry. Every industry has a benchmark. In some industry, you have high inventory turnover. In some industry, you have low. But if you're not meeting that benchmark, you can improve your inventory turns by looking at, okay, why are we having more inventory? Are we doing a bad job in demand planning or forecasting? Are we doing a bad job in really planning the manufacturing process? Are really keeping more stock so we are not running out of our raw materials? I've seen customers, I won't take a name, but there was a customer who was having $150 million in inventory just because they had not done a good job in the planning and scheduling process. And that was almost one-fourth of their business revenue cost. And that's huge. Just improving 3% or 1%, let's not even 3%, 1% can make a huge difference to their top and bottom line revenue, right? I mean, you need to look at that. What are my company's metrics? How are we doing when it comes to inventory? And it's not necessary every one of you will meet that. Some of you will be doing excellent when it comes to inventory. But these are the different areas you need to look at when it comes to looking at business benefits within EE. We have done some enhancement with obsolete inventory. We have some capabilities built in for monitoring and disposition of inventory, where it can keep a track of what inventory is in there and how soon it can be, I mean, it will obsolete based on its attributes, right? So there are some good enhancements done in that area, and of course inventory accuracy. So these things can help you achieve some of the cost you can reduce as a result of implementing these enhancements. So. And then real quick on asset utilization, if you are a very asset-intensive manufacturing environment, if you have that, then from an asset utilization, you may want to look at, okay, how do I make sure that there is no breakdown, or I'm using my asset pretty well. The efficiency, the OEE is pretty is meeting our company standards, right? So we have some good enhancements done in these areas. Of course, enterprise asset management is a good module to use for preventive maintenance, maintaining your assets, and then also operational metrics and some of the BI dashboards we have where we track these metrics for you within the software. And you can look at it within the Enterprise Edition screen. You don't need to go separately to a BI screen or BI option. Okay. So real quick, from a customer engagement standpoint, we have the annually QAD customer engagement process. We do a discovery and a vision process for you. So every year we visit every one of you, and if you don't, let me know. But we do that. Every year we come in and visit and look at your business plan, your business objective, and give you some recommendations on where in your business process or from a business standpoint you can gain or do some improvements. Our vision process is exactly defined for that reason. And once you identify the one area, let's say you want to improve your scheduling area, planning area, or maybe the order customer service area, we can do a Q scan, which is more of a detailed assessment where we go to the nth detail and come up with a list of recommendations on how you can improve those business processes. It not necessarily involves implementing software. It can be just strictly a business process improvement. So we can do that as a result of the vision process. If you decide, I want to look at these two areas, maybe the financial closing cycle or AR or AP, there may be any area within your business you want to look at. And then finally, implementation. We have the easy onboarding implementation methodology where we have defined a ton of materials for Enterprise Edition. Whether it's process maps, test scripts, you name it, we have a lot of materials. But of course, it involves your data, so you will have to participate and leverage some of that. Okay, so from a Q-scan standpoint, we have Q-scan by a business process, so we can look at plan, make, engage, any of those areas. Or by module, or by compliance based on your industry. But then we have Q-scan for an upgrade opportunity. For instance, if you are upgrading to EE and you want to know the top 5 areas I want to gain from my business, we can drill down into those areas as part of the upgrade Q-scan. Whether it's master data harmonization or manufacturing, planning, we can look at those specific areas and maybe make that as a case, as a business case for Enterprise Edition. Okay. With that said, I would like to give the opportunity to Mark Farley to talk about his experience and the business benefits FEI gained out of EE.
So good afternoon. My name is Mark Farley. I'm the head of worldwide IT for a company called FEI. We've been on a journey here for a while. I'm going to talk a little bit about the why did we go down this path and the how did we go down this path. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on functionality. That's kind of Romeo's side of the show. To start with, general statement, if I make anything that's forward-looking, I didn't really mean it, and you should take it with the appropriate grain of salt. FEI is the market share leader and the technology leader in electron microscopy solutions. So we make imaging solutions, workflow, and analytic solutions for looking at things at the nanoscale and at the picoscale. Most of you are familiar with the concepts of nanotechnology, but when you get down to the picoscale, which is 1/trillionth of a meter, we're looking at atoms. So we're literally able to go zoom in on anything right down to its atomic makeup. Purpose of the company is fairly simple. We want to enable our customers to create a better world, to make the planet a better place. We've been a good growth company, so we've been growing along at about, if you look at over the historical perspective, at about 8 to 12% per year. And we have a very, very global footprint. So if you look at the composition of the company, we are a U.S.-held company, we are a U.S.-based company. We have more employees in manufacturing done in Europe, and we have, as of today, a majority of our revenue coming from Asia. So if you put all that together, we have a growth scenario we have a complex footprint, and we have a need to have a good solid operating platform under the whole company to really enable us to get to the next level, so to take it from $1 billion and beyond. So we did a full evaluation round about the end of 2011 where we actually looked at a lot of different packages. We looked across the full spectrum of ERP systems. We've been a QAD customer since 1996, so we started way back when. We have a lot of QAD instances which we're running. But we did do the full breadth of evaluation, and the notion was, as we scale to be $1 billion or more as a company, how do we best utilize and build a set of business processes and practices across our enterprise which will give us the benefits that we need in the future. And looking at the current environment that we had, it was clear that that wasn't going to make it. It was not sufficient to meet our business needs and the demand that we thought we had in our strategic plan. So we undertook a set of decisions. We met with the board, and we made a decision to embark upon a QAD EE implementation round about the beginning of 2012. We got the project team together, we got the business teams together, and we established the structure for what we were doing. And over the course of the next 18 or so months, we built a complete EE deployment on a global scale for FEI as a company. We made the decision, although the system was ready at the end of last year, not to deploy it at the end of last year because the fourth quarter is traditionally our busiest quarter, and we didn't want to disrupt the business. So we started at the very beginning of this year deploying our two largest environments, which are North America and Europe. We're in the process of finishing up the remainder of the global deployment, so I literally get on a plane tomorrow morning to fly to Taiwan to do the next deployments for Taiwan and Asia. Cool. So the business case. So looking at the business case, we broke this down into three major areas that we were looking at in order to have our business succeed. The first area is around productivity. And we took an especially strong look at the financials package across the system because it's one of the things we thought was the key benefits of the enterprise edition functionality. And with that, we embarked in an initiative to come up with a common way of working. So essentially a single global set of financial processes. Alongside that, we had a strong desire to go faster. As I think everybody in this room is probably pressed on a regular basis to get things done faster and to do more with less. And we needed a platform that was going to scale, that was going to give us the opportunity to do that we could use the people that we had more efficiently across our whole organization to be able to meet our operating demands into the future. And lastly with that, we had a need for a single view of the truth, and especially around things like master data. So FEI maintains very complex instruments. We have about 80,000 active items, and we have about 250,000 total items that are used to service instruments that can be as old as 20 years or more that are out in the field. So we needed a really solid infrastructure for that, but we also wanted a good repository for our customers, our suppliers, and everything else as we continue to build up our customer base and we continue to expand our supply chain. Second to that is enabling our growth. So we had a lot of desire to come down to a single operating platform. There are some obvious advantages to this from an IT standpoint, simply in terms of the fact that having one infrastructure as opposed to having many infrastructures is both less expensive, easier to maintain, and generally gives us a higher level of benefit in terms of going faster. So we looked at that as one key advantage with the new platform, that we would really work hard to build up that infrastructure and to build out a common application system for the company. Second to that was the ability to do shared services across different groups within the organization. So we had, we have a lot of different operating units. We operate in a lot of different countries. We were looking for ways that we could more efficiently utilize those resources and generally be able to scale without the need to, continue adding at a linear rate of personnel growth. And then lastly to that, of course, as we've grown, we have an increased need for compliance. We have more things within our environment that can cause us harm. We want to do a better job of managing our risk, but also enable our people in such a way that they can get their job done with a minimum of fuss and reconfiguration of access rights and such throughout the enterprise. Lastly was around cash cycle. So FEI is a capital equipment manufacturing company. Our utilization of things like inventory is pretty high. We buy a lot of very high value items to put inside of our tools. So we took a measure that we call the cash cycle, which is effectively how effectively we're using inventory, what do our payables and receivables look like as a function of revenue. And we break that down to a number of days of cash cycle. And each day within that cash cycle represents millions of dollars worth of working capital. So the ability to see across the enterprise, to really see how well we're utilizing those assets, how we can effectively monitor, maintain our financials across the company was of a huge benefit to us. Along with that, we also undertook a couple of major functionality initiatives, specifically around having a common tax setup, both from a sales and use tax as well as VAT, GST, and related taxes, and a common banking setup across the whole company, whole platforms. So we were able to build up a common structure for the financials. So how did we go about doing that? So the first thing we started off with was process. And we set up effectively a team that was responsible for deploying a global financial process, but we also built out an organization that was focused across all processes so that we were able to see where the interactions were between the different finance processes. Those processes are one common set of operating processes, so we have achieved what we set out to do. We have localized it as was needed. So we took apart any local regulations. We used a lot of the internationalization components that Romeo was talking about to make sure we met regulatory requirements. And we built one set of common documentation and common processes across the whole company. With that, we also built an organization of people who were available both to act as subject matter experts within their region, but also were available from a project standpoint to be able to help us execute the tasks that we needed throughout the course of the project. And it was a relatively lengthy project with the implementation and testing phase around 18 months. So this organization and the breakout of this organization was pretty key to the success of the overall initiative. We use those same people then to do training and to build up our training regime. Many parts of those teams are in fact right now in Taiwan and Japan doing training for the next generation of the rollouts that we're doing in there. And as I mentioned earlier, we also did some major setups around tax and banking. So we need to build with that an effective application infrastructure that we put together. And if you look at the historical composition of the way FEI came together, we are bound by some of the early constructions within the QAD components. And for those of you who have been using the application for a long time, you'll recognize that the database code page and the currency of the database were pretty key factors to what they had. And we did go through a series of upgrades over time into the EB era and the 2010-2011 timeframe with SE, where we tore down some of those constructions, mostly around currency, but we were still left with 5 operating databases across the company. So we had one in Europe where we did some things that I think probably weren't entirely natural, combining Eastern and Western European code pages and such. We had a North America domain, and then we had 3 operating domains within the Japan and Asia Pacific regions. So the objective was then we need to collapse this along with the 14 shared services domains that we run into a single database, which we effectively did using the new functionality and the new components that are within the application suite. So that in itself was a pretty tremendous achievement. So we went to a common code page and a common setup. In theory, this is possible within the SE environment, but when we really looked at it, there were a lot of really good reasons why we didn't want to go down that path. And the biggest of which is this concept of a common way of working. So now that we've collapsed everything, we now have a common repository. We went through a massive data conversion effort across the whole company, spanning, we had 15 years of data within our databases to get everything there. But what we can do with it now is very different than what we had before. So before we had this sliced pretty much on financial entities. So we had Japan, or we would have a Europe sales and service, or something to that effect. But now we're able to much more logically look at how the business actually runs. So whether that's from our manufacturing divisions, whether that's from our sales and service divisions, whether that's from any new acquisitions that we would add in that we're building templates to be able to do, we now have a common platform. The glue that holds that together is effectively the enterprise financial system and the shared sets and the business relationships which sit on top of it, because they enable that common way of working. They enable the common financial view across the whole platform, the whole organization, to be able to effectively utilize not only the domains, but also run the business from the top level, as opposed to having to go into each individual operating domain to do a transaction. So this gives us the enablement for a lot of the things we want to do in terms of better shared services, in terms of better financials, in terms of better ability to scale and grow the business. With that, though, we did a lot of effort in data cleanup, data conversion. So we rationalized all of our suppliers. I think we eliminated something in the range of about 10,000 total suppliers by the time that we were done with that. That was about half the suppliers that we had in the database. We found alarming statistics, like over 1,000 of them had never actually been used. So we came to many of those conclusions as we went through this process, and we really took a lot of time to clean it up. And we spent a lot of time with the business relationships functionality as well, because we were looking across 15 or so years of data which had collected in the ERP system. And especially when you're using service modules and such, you have a lot of end users and you have a lot of other data which has to be correlated correctly, or you're going to end up with the wrong view of the truth, which was the last thing that we needed or wanted as a part of our implementation. The other side of the house, though, is, as I said, we have a lot of items. We have very complicated bill of material structures. We have a lot of list of values and other things that we wanted to be common across the organization. And we wanted to eliminate a lot of the data error and a lot of the issues that are associated with trying to maintain that data. So we built up, in conjunction with Romeo and the services group, this concept of a master domain, or a master data domain, where we store all of that information and we create a publisher-subscriber type of relationship to it. So inside of the master domain, we collect things with what we call global attributes, or in some cases global local attributes. And then those can be then populated with local attributes and pushed to any of the necessary operating domains with the proper operational attributes for those items inside of whatever country, region, or factory that we would be looking at. So this is a pretty powerful piece of functionality, because now I have basically one small team of about 6 people that maintains all of that across the whole company, makes a lot of the key decisions around how to do proper tagging of items in terms of customs or HTC codes, other pieces, and can then just simply push the data as it's needed from a business standpoint into the areas where it's needed, but we don't cloud up the system with all of the other data that isn't needed across the enterprise. So we got a good result. I mean, we really got a lot of good things out of it. But in order to make it all work, we need to take into account the human factors. So we also did a lot of work on the governance side. And we did 2 things in particular that were really helpful and have been a good piece of the project work that we did. The first is that we standardized all of our business forms. So we had essentially individual operating forms across the business, where one domain might be using the pre-printed forms coming out of the package. We had a lot of forms in Europe coming out of Optio. We were using an archaic version of Adobe Jet Forms on some of our North American forms. There really wasn't a common look and feel. There wasn't a common set of practices that we used to make sure that we really had the right data on those forms. So we undertook an effort where we completely redid the forms and the forms layouts. We built a new set of structures, a new set of forms for the whole company, so that all of our forms now have a common look and feel. They all have common data on them, so we know that we have the right information going into the form, which is a good thing from a compliance standpoint. And they're all now stored electronically. So from a historical look back and archive and further compliance standpoint, we can go back and see what form we sent to the customer at any given date. And this is a big benefit in terms of getting to more of a paperless enterprise. With that, then we also took advantage of the roles and responsibilities components. We built out a very extensive security infrastructure, but it's one security infrastructure as opposed to the roughly 14 or so that we had before, which is a big advantage not only from the perspective that people who need roles and responsibilities can simply be assigned them. Those are common across the different operating domains. They match the processes that we implemented, but it also takes a lot of load off of our process owners because they have to audit these things every 6 months to make sure the right people have the right access. And it helps our internal audit team because we can now pull a common segregation of duties report from the system, which gives us a really nice view into where do we have potential conflict, do we have appropriate compensating controls, and are we meeting all of the necessary requirements from a European standpoint, from a Sarbanes-Oxley standpoint, and other related requirements. So we did a lot of work here to really build out the full structure of the governance within the package. So to talk a little bit, how did we do, right? What are some of the sort of the accomplishments? I threw together some numbers just looking at this in terms of what we did. So as I said, we did about 20 forms. So that was a big effort because everybody had a lot of opinions about what should be in the forms, what shouldn't be in the forms, how should they look. Those are common across the enterprise. We did an awful lot of work on data cleaning. So we started with 15 years of data. We rationalized that down to 3 years of data. We cleaned up all of the master data components. And then we ultimately converted to this point, and we're not done yet, about 320 million transactions. So as you look at data conversion, this is a big job, right? And it's one of the key things that I would say and will say from a lessons learned perspective. We are not a high volume manufacturer. And we generated 320 million transactions that needed to go across. And we probably got another 80 million or so that we're going to do as we get done with the Asia deployments. So it's a big, big job. Second to that, we also took the process work that we did and we turned it into a set of use cases and a set of test scripts that we could execute across the company. And we executed between all of the different pieces about a little over 1,000 total test scripts in testing the functionality of the whole system from end to end. And this is in part because finance touches pretty much everything that you have in your organization. So as we built out each of these processes, we looked at all of the touch points and we built up test scripts. We were able to consolidate some of these in many cases depending on the region or the type of testing that we were doing, but the total library of test scripts is over 1,000 test scripts. We also chose to use what I think most of you would think is a rather large collection of testers. We did that in part because it did build in some efficiency in running through the test scripts, but also because it was a tremendous opportunity for people to see, touch, and feel the system before we ever went live. So we used this as a part of the training regime for a lot of the super users and other people, and it was really a fascinating exercise in many regards because I would sit in some of these sessions and we would hear comments from two people who've ostensibly been working together for a long time, such as, "That's why you needed that. I've always wondered why you want that information and why it's such a big deal when you don't get it." And it brought a really strong sense of collaboration in many of these sessions along with it that I don't think we would have gotten otherwise. In the normal course of doing business, everyone is always very busy, and it was a good opportunity for people to sit together and really understand how they're working and what they're working on and why it matters. So we got a lot of benefit out of that, although with a certain amount of cost, obviously, for the logistics of that testing. With that, then, kind of near and dear to my heart, since I am responsible for all the IT stuff, we did eliminate approximately 650 customizations as we went through the system process. That was a little over 50%, if my memory serves, of the total customizations we had. And that was in part by simply cleaning up some of what was there, as well as then using functionality which was in the new platform that did a lot of the functions that we needed the customizations for in the past. So I think we got a lot of good results out of this. It certainly has been a monumental journey to get there, but we managed to pull it off. What are some of our finance team members saying? So we're still early into the implementation, so we haven't been able to completely measure the business case, but we've been getting some feedback from our finance team members on some of the things that they really like. And a lot of those things, if I have to pick just one off this list of any of them, everybody likes the Excel integration. really likes the Excel integration, whether that's from the browse perspective or that's inside of the accelerator product in terms of automating simple things like the input of vouchers or other information. This has been a particularly popular piece of functionality. We've been able to use some of the other finance functions as well. We do a lot with masking to make it simpler to get data in and to eliminate errors. We've done quite a bit in terms of netting of transactions, especially within a local operating region. But probably biggest of that is use of the transit layer so that we can review what goes into the GL before it goes into the GL, and we can keep it clean so that we have a good mechanism to do that. That aids, obviously, in everything that would follow from a GL perspective all the way through the closing process. There's some obvious general advantages as well. The ability to browse across the whole system is something that we could never do before. The ability to log into any operating entity and operate across multiple operating entities at the same time are also areas where we've seen some benefit from a business standpoint. To talk a little bit about lessons learned. So I broke this down into 6 major lessons learned. First one is business readiness. This is not a small project in most cases. You should not enter into it solely with the idea that an upgrade, because it is a technical upgrade in a very technical sense, but it is also a transformational process, especially if you really start to look at how your company works and how the processes that go behind it work. And if you use it in that sense, I think you're going to get a lot more value out of the overall proposition. But it comes with the need to do really a lot, from having good executive sponsorship. We had good sponsorship from the QAD side, and making sure that you've really engaged your business teams and everyone in your business for this transition. Secondly is around data conversion. As I mentioned, this is not a simple process. You should consider carefully, if you're going to do data conversion, how much data conversion, how much cleanup you're going to do, why you're going to do it. In some cases, we even went back and looked and asked, should we have converted some of this data at all? Maybe we should have just focused on the master data that we were doing. So you need to really look at the business case around this, because if you do any data conversion, you will spend a fair amount of time and energy at it. Third point, which is fairly obvious, I've touched on it a couple of times, is the finance system impacts everything. And as much as I would have thought that everyone knows this and that everyone had thought through it, when we actually got into the mechanisms of it, the touch points there are often very subtle, and they're not often recognized, and it can lead you down paths that you wouldn't otherwise expect to take. So the analysis that you do as a part of your planning stage, as a part of your process mapping stage and everything else is really critical to how well the rest of the project goes and how much time and effort you spend in it. Number 4, business relationships. So we believe strongly we will get a lot of value out of business relationships, but it took a tremendous amount of analysis to figure out how all of these things work together, because your data, like our data, is probably not perfectly clean, and every address does not perfectly align to a customer, which is in the right character set, even in some cases. And I don't read most Asian languages, so it's difficult for me to understand how do some of these work? And it turns out that we spent a lot more time dealing with I would say, the logistics of how things are connected within the system than I would have guessed at. So we got some really good results out of it. We cleaned up an awful lot of data. We got a lot of linkage. We, have a much better platform for the future, but it was not a simple transition. Many of you probably already been through this one, but for us, we were still coming in many cases from a character environment. There is a big difference between the character environment and the .NET environment. We have people that go back, 10 plus years in terms of operating the system, and they were, of course, very good at it. So this transition to the more modern user interface has a lot of advantages in terms of being able to do future onboarding, in terms of being an easier platform to train and manage and to add functionality to. But it comes with the organizational change aspect that you have to manage this transition of the user interface. And lastly, again, this is somewhat obvious, but control your appetite. It's said that the eyes are often bigger than the stomach, and there is a huge amount of new functionality which is in the platform which you can use for your business. And there are a lot of people who would like to have many of those pieces of functionality right now. But the process of getting through this transition is a big enough process all by itself that you should, at least moderate the scope, because you can quickly take on too much. And we've been in several circumstances where we've had to back away from a few things we said we would do, simply because it was more than we could handle. With that, what are some of the next steps for us, just to give you a little feel for what we're doing? Number one is on intercompany automation. So we didn't make as much progress as we were expecting to here, in part because we weren't able to fully utilize some of the functionality. Some of it wasn't as deep as we thought it would be. In other parts, we had organizational issues where we had enough other things going on, and we needed pretty strong subject matter expertise from people who were very busy. So we're going to attack this problem much more fully in the coming year to be able to really do that and finish out some of the pieces we had from a closing and consolidation process standpoint. Secondly, which is related to that in a similar thread, is the use of the secondary accounting field codes. So we see a lot of benefit to this, especially as it comes to BI. But the way our products are structured, the way our product lines are built and everything else, this rather quickly, as we did the analysis, started to look like it was going to be a pretty big project all by itself. So we separated this out and said, okay, we're going to take this on as a separate initiative. We're able to do enough consolidation and cleanup in terms of cost center and other financial data that we have a much better view of the truth. So we're just going to keep building on that and sort of incrementally making it better. Any type of electronic commerce, any type of paper elimination, e-invoicing, EDI enhancements are all within our roadmap of things that we can do, and we have now a better platform, a better way of looking at those. And then lastly with that, we are, of course, looking to do much more BI, both from the perspective of relating data within the ERP system, but also in relating data that comes from outside of the ERP system, across getting a view, for instance, of things like our entire pipeline all the way from lead to cash, and being able to talk to our CRM systems through the ERP platform and all the way out ultimately to the service transactions for the install of the tools in the field. So hopefully this gives you an okay feel for what we did and how we did it. I'm going to give it to Romeo here for a second to run through the summary, and then we can take questions.
Thank you, Mark. That was a great story. I'm sure you could all relate to what Mark has done and how you like to achieve similar results. So really, as we mentioned, I mean, the key objective is you really need to have an ERP strategy. You might have heard that in today's presentation or chat with Nigel Montgomery from Gartner. I mean, he mentioned you need to have an ERP strategy. At the end of the day, it's not an IT project. It is a business project. It is a business impact when you do EE. So you really need to have a good strategy, a good list of objectives you're trying to meet at the end of the day. So that's very key. Secondly, as Mark showed and we have been seeing with other customers, really have a business case when you undertake EE. Do that business case on your own. I mean, it's something you can do yourself. Or if you need QAD to help, we can help you as well. But you definitely want to do that before you undertake this project. And then execute. I mean, Enterprise Edition is ready for you. You really need to decide how much and where you want to focus, right? I mean, that should be key. As Mark said, you really don't want to do everything in phase one. Focus on the top 5 things you want to achieve, or 3 things, and then lay out the next few phases you want to do as next phase. And then really look at real-world examples like FEI and other customers who have done EE, and how you can do similar business undertaking when it comes to Enterprise Edition. Thank you for your time. I will open up for questions. Mark, I'm sure you'll have more questions than me. So.